Hello and welcome back to another Backflip Happy Hour. I'm Ryan Fring, co-creative director, co-founder here at Backflip and Lord of the Podcast. I've decided when I was doing a podcast intro that since I'm co-everything in this company, I want to be my own person in the podcast. So I decided I'm Lord of the Podcast, which is kind of like Lord of the Dance. Speaking of Lord of the Dance, we got the Lord of the Dance himself, John Shoemaker, over here. What's up, John?
Hey, it's me. I'm the director of the co-directors, Lord of the Dance,
and we're going on strike.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen those. One of the unions in Hollywood is on strike. I can't read their union logo, so I don't know which one it is. It's like Local 600 or something. I don't know. Hopefully it all works out for them. But that's not why we're here. We're here to drink a little bit and hang out with interesting people. And we definitely have some interesting people today. But first, we must share what we're drinking. What are you drinking, John?
Okay, I am, and it's lucky that I came into Backflip to do the stream today. I'm drinking the Sea Lip Pretend Gin. The NA gin.
The NA, yeah.
I was cutting back for a week, giving myself a good detox.
I love that.
And tomorrow's my birthday, so I'm like, all right, I'll just stick it out through I'll go all the way to birthday celebration tomorrow, and then I'll be gonna be good to go. But yeah, but I'm still happy to have. I love I think we've.
So you were detoxing, and then tomorrow you're going to start toxing again.
Yeah, just toxing, just full of tox.
Just full on tox.
No, yeah, I mean you just need a reset every now and then.
Absolutely.
When you get to the, I mean, this is a whole other discussion. I'm sure we could.
When you get to our age,
that we could bring into our discussion with people more qualified for this, but. When you're just like getting that feeling of like, it's been a tough day. I need this to unwind or whatever. Then you're like not even enjoying it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for the enjoyment of the flavor and whatever. It's just so. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Carolyn's trying to join.
Yeah, she's talking in the chat down below. No.
Anyway, but
she's like, what makes us more qualified? He's talking about counselors.
Yeah, moral from a moral level.
Yeah.
But I like having something that is like unique to drink. So I was talking about this like what's it called? Jake's Strong Ginger.
Yeah, I have that on my list. You told me about that several weeks ago.
It's really good, and it has like a little bite to it. It's really nice with like seltzer water or whatever you want to mix with it. And it has that same satisfaction of like kind of refreshing or a drink with like a little bit of a bite, but it's not alcohol if you don't feel like it that day or that evening. So
yeah, I'm totally down with that as well. And you should check out Athletic Brewing. I think they're at Woodman's maybe.
I bought.
Yeah, you mentioned those. Yeah, that's who I heard it from.
Their IPAs are.
It tastes like beer.
They're confusing. Yeah, it's like
so good.
What is this? Yeah.
Also, when I know there's no alcohol in there, I'm like, give me 5. I just, I want to drink it like candy. I today am full on toxing, so I've got some gin and some healthy tonic, but it's got the quinine, so it gets the job done. And then of course I've got all the other things. I've got a little coffee, sparkling. At this point, I just make the sparkling in the soda stream, and then I just drink the liter of soda stream or however big this is. I have a problem. All right. That's enough of us. We've lost everyone who was watching earlier because people came to see at least this person and maybe this person as well. So welcome, Father Tait and Carolyn.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Thanks, guys, for coming on. Yeah. Carolyn last week was like, I think this would be a good week that I come on again. And I was like, I 100% agree. And John showed up. So it was great. All right.
I'm
So
also
Father,
so many things.
you are.
Co-producer, co-host.
You usually just send me texts like, "This is going wrong. You should do this better," and it helps
I
us
never
improve.
say it like that. I always say, "Hey, just so you know."
Yeah. No, it's super positive and helpful. You're like the only one who offers suggestions like that, so I appreciate that. But yeah, we got Father Tait here. Before we hear your story, we heard Carolyn last week and several other times. What are you drinking, Father? What did you bring today?
I'm also toxing here with the alcoholic version. This is my beverage tonight. This is Birra Nursia, which is brewed by Benedictine monks in Norcia, Italy. This is the extra, and it's a beautiful label as well. This is the rose window that was in the facade of their church, which unfortunately was destroyed by an earthquake. The whole city of Norcia, where Saint Benedict and Saint Scholastica were born, suffered a very serious earthquake, and they're still kind of dealing with that. But luckily, the monks were all safe, and now they're building a new monastery, but they still have their brewery going, and so I'm enjoying a Birra Nursia Extra this evening.
That's awesome. I love that, and I feel like that's kind of part and parcel. You have refined tastes. I almost said, it's extra. I'm not trying to say you're extra. You have refined tastes. So I appreciate that about you. No, I appreciate your refined sensibilities. So
yeah,
that makes sense. And you said tonight, so because it is 7:00 there, right?
That's right. So this happy hour, I feel okay having a beer because it's well past 5:00. So
this is the stress that I had, because I was like, one of my strongest memories of Father Tait is doing the video we did for the One ACA, and you were with us. Yeah, with the family,
the Butlers.
That's right.
The Butler family.
And you were like teaching us all about wine there. And I was just like, man, he just like knows so much, like so much more sophisticated than where I'm coming from. So I aspire to that, but if I ever see myself having one too many bargain Bush brand drinks outside of deer season, or
specifically Bush brand wines,
it's time to Is it
better or worse than Winking Owl?
We need to go back toward refining.
Yeah, well, that's what this is. Hopefully this can help reset your sensibilities a little bit, hanging out with Father Tait. And of course, we've got Carolyn here. Carolyn, what are you drinking today?
Well, keeping it on brand, keeping it on theme. So last week, had the blood orange. Today, got the cranberry. So I do like the cranberry better. Hannah,
you got to be repping.
Identified that she thought I would like this better. The blood orange is great. Love it. Cranberry, a little bit better.
Which one's the tart one?
Cranberry. This one, the cranberry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one we identified tastes like, we think it's like almost tastes like a sour.
Almost a sour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because I'm not huge on sours, so it is enjoyable, but it was my less favorite of the two.
Yeah,
I would be in Ryan's camp on that. Staying
not
away
a big
from
sour fan.
Beers. No.
Yeah.
He dislikes many things, and I tried to convince him to like them.
I also like many things.
But you also dislike the things that I like, and I just want you to enjoy them as well.
Also, like are sours big in Rome or Europe?
No, in Belgium.
Belgium.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which is one reason why I like them.
The Roman beer scene, I think, is kind of growing. Obviously, they have some mass-produced beers here in Italy, Peroni and Birra Moretti. So those are kind of the big ones. But even they're doing some more specialized things, and there are more kind of microbreweries and things popping up. So
they're the Busch Lights of Italy, basically.
They have a beer called the the Birra Moretti is Baffo d'Oro, which means the golden mustache. So that's kind of fun.
And you do have the Trappist. So there's Birra Nursia, which is not properly Trappist, but it's brewed by monks. And then Tre Fontane is in Rome, like it's just south of the city. So you do have that one as well.
Right. They are Trappist, although I believe that some of the Belgian brew masters came down to help the Norcia monks with their with their production. But
the Belgium, like what's that one that you brought back, Carolyn?
West Vleteren.
I should know this. West Vleteren, yes. Yeah. So we're in good company when we're talking about beer and booze and the Catholic Church.
We'll talk about that forever.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. You are in Rome. I mentioned earlier, 7:00 there. You feel less bad. To be clear, I don't feel bad about drinking now or at 11. We've done this 70 times or something, so it's just kind of what we do. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Great. Well, one thing before I delve into that, I appreciate you calling yourself the Lord of the podcast, Ryan. So what I could do is I could refer to you as Monsignore here for the rest of the podcast, because that literally means my Lord. So if I could do that.
I feel like that we might get into muddy waters too, because as the title implies, we're talking about the Inquisition, and I believe, okay, so your official title is Official of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Your title that I'm giving you today is High Inquisitor.
Oh, I like that.
I don't know that I can speak heresies.
I like it.
I don't know that I want you guys calling me Lord.
I feel like there's a coup in the making here. If someone sees this title under Father Tait's name, there's going to be he's going to get called into someone's office because of
oh my gosh. I would love that 100%.
Me too.
Then they'd send me back to Madison, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So
cheers.
We'd take you back. Yeah.
Thanks. So I'm originally from Sauk City area, Roxbury. St. Norbert's is my home parish. I grew up there in the Sauk City area and went through 8th grade in the Sauk Prairie schools, and but then went to Holy Name Seminary for my high school. So I'm what they call a lifer. Not every priest is a lifer, but us lifers have been to high school seminary and continued on. So I did finish there, graduated in 94, which was the second to last year that Holy Name was open. And then I went on to college seminary at Winona, so Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary on St. Mary's University campus, and was there for, I did finish my college there, but was actually in the seminary for 3 years. I took a leave of absence for 1 year and just kind of wanted to continue my discernment, but outside the seminary setting. And that was a very good year in God's grace and providence, but still felt that call. So after that year of being away from the seminary, I came back into the seminary formation and came to Rome for the first time in 1998. And then I studied at the Pontifical North American College, and was there through 2003, and did a STB, which is kind of the bachelor's level theology, general theology. I did that at the Angelicum, which is run by the Dominican fathers, and then finished my licentiate, which was in sacramental theology at Sant Anselmo, which was Benedictine school. So 2003, I finish, and then come back to Madison. I was parochial vicar at St. Denis Parish on the east side of Madison for 2 years, and then was named pastor of Ridgeway and Barneveld. So it's now St. Bernadette Parish. Before it was St. Bridget and Immaculate Conception Parish. So I was there for 3 years. And then I came back to Rome for the second time for studies, and that was 2008. and was here until December of 2012. And so that time I was doing studies in canon law, so church law, not
How did that
law.
work? Was that something that you were like, hey, I think this would be interesting, and you talked to the bishop, or was that something that was asked of you?
That was where the Bishop Morlino talked to me to ask me to do that. And as I say, it was a moment of what we call actual grace, like, you know, God entering in at a particular moment and giving you strength to do something. Because I said yes at that moment. So if I would have thought about it more, I may have given a different answer. But in any case, I had that actual grace and I said yes. So because I was very happy in being a pastor and really loved my time there in Ridgeway and Barneveld, but then kind of stepped back. So, you know, being a student priest is kind of a different way of being a priest. You know, you usually think of priests in a parish setting, but here I was doing work in you know, back in school, so to speak. So it was a different kind of a real shifting of gears. But that process took 3 years to get what we call the licentiate in canon law. And then I did another 1.5 years and completed my doctorate in December of 2012. And that was at the University of the Holy Cross, Santa Croce, which is run by Opus Dei. So did my canonical studies there. Then I came back to Madison. Starting January of 2013, I began in the tribunal for the diocese as the judicial vicar and held that post for 5 years. And then also came in 2015 to be pastor of St. Peter's in Ashton and St. Martin's in Martinsville. So just kind of off the west side of Madison. And was there for 3 years as well. And then third time's the charm. Here I am back in Rome. 2018, came back in March, actually end of February, started March 2018 at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and have been there ever since. So that's a little bit about my history, where I'm from and what I'm doing and what my background is.
Yeah, what's the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and you know, why are you working there? Like, what are you doing?
Excellent question. So the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith is one of many, we can say, offices or bodies within something called the Roman Curia. The Roman Curia is basically those offices that assist the Pope in the governance or the running of the Catholic Church. Obviously, you know, there are things at a local level. The bishop, the local priests, local lay people collaborate, work there, but also there's kind of the universal nature of the Catholic Church. And so to deal with that, you know, the Pope has the Roman Curia. And
yeah, like the home office.
Kind of, yeah. You could say that, although, I mean, obviously, all the work that goes on in the dioceses or various religious orders, that's all super important as well. But, you know, the Roman Curia kind of addresses maybe some of the bigger issues or things that are, you know, maybe a little more sensitive. And so that's why the Roman Curia has these different offices to assist the Pope, right? Really, that's our job, is we're here to help the Pope in different areas. So the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith was not originally called that. We are the oldest continuous office within the Roman Curia. So it was started really in the 1540s, and it had the name of the Supreme Sacred Congregation of the Roman and Universal Inquisition. So when you hear about the Inquisition, that's kind of where that comes from. Although the Inquisition actually dates back further, but this was, as it said, the Roman and Universal Inquisition, because what is the Inquisition? Well, Inquisition, it means that you're seeking or you're looking into specific matters, and particularly matters of the faith. So, you know, you can go back you think of someone like Saint Dominic in the early 1200s, and the early Dominicans, they were battling a heresy. Earlier, Carolyn was wanting me to list off heresies. Well, one was this heresy of Catharism, and basically, like the early Manichaeans, okay, so the time of St. Augustine, in a sense, downplaying or negating the importance of creation, matter, right? Trying to have a spiritual outlook, but then because of that overly spiritual outlook, forgetting some very important pieces about being souls that are incorporated in a body, right? So anyway, I don't want to go into all this kind of.
Is there going to be a test later? Should I be taking?
No, there won't be a test.
Yeah,
I don't want to fail either. But anyway, at that point, right? So local bishops or areas are trying to deal with these challenges to the faith, right? And so they would set up maybe local inquisitions or even national ones. So you think of Monty Python, the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, but this is something that's more kind of localized. But in the 1540s, if we think kind of historically, we're dealing with the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Church's trying to respond to the challenges of those reformers, Luther, Henry VIII, Zwingli, Calvin, right? So we've got all of these kind of challenges to the Catholic faith going on at this time. And so to have this universal inquisition, it's meant to deal with or work with protecting the Catholic faith. And so that's really one of the main things that was there at the beginning of its formation and continues even to today, although there's maybe a little change of emphasis in what we do. But in addition to kind of protecting doctrine and the series of beliefs that we hold as Catholics, there's also a moral component, right? Because our thoughts and our beliefs translate into actions. So there's a moral component that was also there very much at the beginning of the supreme sacred congregation of the Roman and Universal Inquisition. So in terms of protecting morality, so crimes like simony, which would be the selling of holy things for money, or certain sins or crimes in the area of sexual morality, prostitution, right? So it's strange. Why is the church dealing with that? We also have to remember that the Pope was a temporal ruler, right? He ruled central Italy. And so there's also kind of things that are not only about the faith, but then there's also practical applications for running that. So at the very beginning, also, there's this kind of component of watching over morality. Now, sometimes, not only with the Inquisition of the past in local places where, you hear about kind of torture or these kinds of things that are going on.
The History Channel says, tons of torture and 320,000 or so were estimated executed.
Yeah. I don't know about, I haven't studied the numbers, but obviously, there were excesses. Enjoy a little bit of beer there. So there were excesses, but, and even with the congregation in Rome, there was a great reaction to that because right now our offices are right next to the Vatican, but before they were across the Tiber River, closer to what would be like the Piazza del Popolo, kind of on the northern end of Rome, the center of Rome. But actually the people of Rome went and burned the the congregation down, the people of Rome, that is. So we had to move closer to the Vatican. And in fact, Pope Pius.
This wasn't recently, right?
No, this was in the 1560s.
Okay.
So no fires.
Recently, in terms of the history of Rome, perhaps, but
well,
not
yes,
recently
I mean,
for us.
We're not talking about 750 BC or whenever the founding of Rome was, but because of those excesses, right, was trying to get a better sense, but also make it closer to the Vatican. Pope Pius V, Pope, the end of the 1560s, early 1570s, very important in the history of the church. He promulgated the Catechism of Trent, the Missal of Trent. So if you hear about the Tridentine Mass, he would have promulgated that Missal for the liturgy. So a very important pope, but he was also an inquisitor. He worked at the office of the Inquisition. The Pope at the time was the head, and that lasted up until Pope Paul VI in the 1960s. The Pope was the head of the congregation. That's why it was called supreme, because the Pope was in charge. So that's why it was called the Supreme Sacred Congregation. And sometimes it was just referred to as La Suprema. That was the CDF, or we'll get to what it was called later. But in any case,
or like the Supreme.
Exactly. That's all you need to say.
Was there like a Motown vibe going on? The Supremes. I'm making a Supremes reference.
Not quite the same. It's exactly the same, but different. So,
but I'm going to make a musical now. Ryan and I are going to write a musical.
Exactly the same, but different. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, on the origin in Italy, that's how we ended up with, that new flavor of pizza that added on from pepperoni and cheese and.
Right, like Supreme Sacred. That would be like this, like the Super Supreme. Probably in any case, but Pope Pius V, he actually stopped construction of St. Peter's Basilica, because the one you see now is actually the second St. Peter's. So he stopped construction there and had the workers finish our palazzo where our offices are. So our offices date back to the 1570s.
He's like, let's get that Inquisition back up. We got to get that going again.
Let's get that back online. The heresies still were in vogue in the day.
Aren't they always?
In fact. Anyway, the history kind of goes on, and it had that kind of that doctrinal and the moral aspects. There were a number of other things that the congregation did in terms of looking at saints, looking at it was not directly under the Inquisition, but you may have heard of something of the Index of Forbidden Books, if you have ever heard of that. So basically these were books that were deemed to be containing heretical opinions or dangerous opinions for Catholic faith. But because it was dealing with the faith, it was kind of linked with the work of the Inquisition. Although
like Harry Potter, I think Harry Potter's on that.
Maybe
I don't think Harry Potter's too recent. It didn't quite make it.
Oh, okay. From the way some people talk, it's on the index.
That is true. Some people do speak of it in those terms. But so moving up. Say 400 years or so, we come to St. Pius X. So we've gone from St. Pius V to St. Pius X. So early 1900s, he changes the name of the Inquisition to the Holy Office, Sant'Uffizio. So that's another name that sometimes is used. The Inquisition, La Suprema, the Holy Office. And the Holy Office, again, kept those same kind of duties. With Pope Paul VI, things change a bit. So he's no longer in charge. So after the Second Vatican Council, ending in 1965, he kind of renounces being in charge or the head of that, and it names a separate prefect. So this is kind of the reorganization of the Roman Curia after the Second Vatican Council. So there are these prefects, only partially joking, I like that.
Just so people who join in know.
Exactly. So, and also there's a little bit of a shift in emphasis, right? Because, as I said, initially we're protecting the doctrines of the faith. But Paul VI wanted to also not only protect that, but to promote the faith. So it kind of takes on maybe a more positive connotation or focus to say, we're going to also want to promote the authentic faith of the church. So that's kind of a shift that goes on with Pope Paul VI. And so that's kind of what we've inherited today. And Pope St. John Paul II had the document called Pastor Bonus, which came out in, I believe, 1988. And that kind of gives the structure for the Roman Curia as we know it today. Now, there's a lot of discussion that Pope Francis wants to also make changes to that structure and whatever. And so we're kind of waiting. It was said that it would come out soon, and we're still waiting yet, because I think there was just kind of some rethinking or wanting to kind of tighten that up a little bit. But in any case, that's what we're currently governed by is this Roman Curia document that came out in 1988.
The latest iteration is a lot. It's like the guidance on dealing with toddlers. Like, instead of just saying stop it, stop doing that, don't hit your sister, you need to guide that. Well, what should I be doing?
Exactly. That's right. It's kind of that. Now, I work, so there are different. Yeah, exactly. And there are kind of different sections of the CDF. So when I say CDF, that's short for Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. But there are different sections. So there's still the doctrinal section, which deals with questions of doctrine. So like if people, especially maybe professors or authors, are writing books that may be somewhat questionable or whatever, they start this dialogue with them to say, is this the authentic faith? Is this teaching or this publication still faithful to what we believe as Catholics? There's also kind of a lot of consultation that goes on. So if bishops have questions, they can write to us about matters of the faith. Or if there are other bodies or groups within the Roman Curia who want, who need consultation, or, they're preparing a document but want to kind of get an idea as, are we being faithful? Are we on the right path? Then the doctrinal section will give an opinion or look into that. I'm in what we call the disciplinary section. So
sounds less fun.
I'm going to have a drink before I talk about that one.
Well, that depends on your perspective, Carolyn. I mean,
yeah.
Are you like an old school inquisitor and it's fun for you, or like a new school inquisitor and you're trying to guide? It's less fun. But
no, I hope that's clear. Like, you think of the Inquisition, and that's part of what I want to do with this too, is just help clear up misconceptions and misunderstandings, of the past and right now as well. Like, your job is not kicking down doors and pulling people out by their ears and saying, listen here, but, promoting the true faith. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so
I was going to say, there's also like, I mean, man, I can't imagine the weight that must be on your shoulders or the shoulders of the people in the organization, because I think at surface level, people who, I don't know, just don't have the perspective, see this as like, oh, they're like, these, rule, like, people who are like disciplining and all the rules and all that stuff. And it sounds very like, I don't know, that's why people have negative connotations about it. But the importance can't be overstated, because a lot of people will just use people they know in their life to point to be like, Well, I know one Catholic who's doing X, Y, and Z, or my priest said this, and they're Catholic, so yeah, so then it's good. But like, not all those things are true, and it's a huge responsibility that you have to like.
Right, and that's why I think it is important to recognize that even at the local level, especially the bishops have kind of a primary responsibility, because obviously, we're, let's say, maybe 60 of us total in the entire office, and that includes all these different sections and including our archives, which the archives are extremely important because they go back to the 1540s and have all of this correspondence, all of these opinions. One of the other things that we do is we, there's a congregation called the Congregation for the Causes of the Saints, right? So when someone is being presented to say, well, they have these virtues, and in this, there's a whole process for canonization, but sometimes they've written a lot of things. Well, then you have to make sure that what they were writing also is in conformity with the faith, because it would be hard to say, well, we know that this person is in heaven if they've said these things that were very against the Catholic faith. So but part of that's there in the archives and all of that.
Also, I want to point out, you said there's 60 of you in your office or so,
and that includes everyone from our porter, the one who kind of checks people in or lets people into the building, and then we have people called uscieri, the ushers, which basically, again, they assist people who would come to the office or kind of take things around to the superiors or do those things. So it includes even sure. those workers.
Yeah.
We have
there's like 60 of you responsible for taking care of 1.3-ish billion Catholics and the heresies.
Right. Well, so like the doctrinal section might have 10 officials in it.
How are you traveling around and torturing and executing people?
See, we can't do it. We can't do it. In the disciplinary section where I work, we have we're the biggest section currently. So we have maybe about 18 or 19 officials in our section. So we're all canonists, and we're looking at kind of some of those moral pieces, right? So obviously, and we're looking at the most serious ones. So we look at schism and heresy and apostasy, because the church does have penalties for those, which is to be excommunicated, right? So meaning you can't receive the sacraments, you might be removed from your office if you have a particular job or position. But excommunication is not a forever thing. It's there, and if someone changes, if someone repents, has a conversion, then that excommunication goes away. But it's there as a sign, and you even see this in the scriptures with St. Paul. He allows this so that people can come back. So we do have penalties, so to speak. It's not physical penalties, but spiritual penalties, and then other penalties as well. So we deal with schism, heresy, and apostasy, but then we also deal with offenses against the sacraments. So like desecration of the Holy Eucharist for us as Catholics, that would be one of the most serious things, and that carries with it penalties. Or the sacrament of confession. If a priest breaks the seal and tells someone what he hears in confession, and that's reported to us, then that falls under our jurisdiction, or if there's unfortunately, maybe in confession, a priest approaches someone in a sexual way or asks for some kind of sexual encounter, because that's, number one, inappropriate for the life of a priest, but also it affects the dignity of that sacrament, where it's supposed to be for mercy and conversion and changing your life. When a priest would use that in that fashion, it's so serious that the CDF says we need to reserve that to ourselves, because that's harming the person, obviously, who gets propositioned there, but also it harms the sacrament, it harms our faith, because people should, be able to trust the sacraments as a place of encounter with God. So there's also something that came in a bit more recently, but because the Catholic Church believes that ordination is reserved to men, if there are women who would attempt to be ordained, that also is reserved to us. And then also if a bishop would attempt to ordain a woman, then that also falls under us. And then I guess what is most maybe well known or most kind of in the news is that we address the Church's response to the sexual abuse of minors by clerics, right? And so obviously the civil law, the civil authorities, they're going to maybe, arrest, imprison, whatever priests who would be found guilty of these things. But also the Church has its own process and can have different penalties, like being removed from the office, or kind of the most serious penalty is that if priest is found guilty, he could be dismissed from the clerical state and no longer exercise priestly ministry. So the Church needs to respond to that. And again, this is kind of a recent shift in approach, but it used to be that we understand this as a violation of the dignity of the priesthood, because a priest should not be doing that. But now, and there's a new kind of section of canon law dealing with penalties in the Church that's going to be, that the Pope just promulgated and will take effect on the 12th or the 8th of December of this year. But the shift there is that it's not only an offense against the priesthood, it's really an offense against the dignity of that minor who was abused. And so it's a little change of perspective. They obviously go hand in hand, but that's how it's treated in this new penal law for the Church that's coming into effect on the 8th of December. And then, so because these are such serious things, that's why the Church wants at the highest level to have a level of oversight. So we don't always judge the cases at our level. We're often more of an appeal level or for recourse, but most of the decisions are made in a local diocese. But we still have to give permission for that, and we have to kind of have that oversight of the whole process, given the seriousness of these situations.
Right. So you're not trolling on Facebook, and if Carolyn says something, you're not like, Carolyn, you can't say that. I mean, you will, because we're friends, but but that's not what you guys do. That would not be serious. Likely not, the serious type of heresy or issue that you're talking about. No,
and normally, especially for the doctrinal question about heresy, it's really a lot of like books or more kind of shall we say official course syllabi or something like that,
sure. Or substantial content. Yeah,
exactly. Obviously the internet is a big place, and a lot of things are said, and
it's a big
a
pile
lot of them
crap.
are wrong, but we don't go after that. But if certain things are maybe reported to us from a lot of different ways. We may need to look into it, but oftentimes we're looking specifically maybe at those more kind of if we want to say seminal points where things can start going off the rails. Like, so if you're looking at someone who's teaching future priests in a seminary or in a Catholic university where it's problematic, that's what we're going to maybe look at a bit more seriously, because, like, again, yeah, everything's out there on the internet and we won't reach the end of it. So
I have a question. So, thinking about, you've been doing this for 3.5 years, and you're dealing with some of the most painful and most scandalous things that happen in the life of the church. How has this affected your perspective of your priesthood?
That's a great question. So when I read the cases, I am saddened. Sometimes I'm very angry. And you see the sadness comes not only because of the harm that people have suffered. Sometimes the sadness comes because sometimes the allegations are made, but maybe false, or because they happened so long ago, they're not maybe able to be proven. So you kind of have people in limbo. So that's kind of a sad reality. But I think for me personally, as a priest, number one, reminds me and calls me to be holy and strive for that holiness myself. I mean, I need to strive to be holy. And obviously that's God's grace. He's the first one to help us on that holiness. But it's a reminder of my call to be holy. And then it's also a reminder of the gift of the priesthood. So as a priest, I really sense it as a gift, and to see the sadness of a priest who will lose that because of what he's chosen or done. It's a I want to say maybe a healthy kind of fear that, but for that grace of God, I don't want to be in that position, right? So it's a sense of trying to be holy, and a sense of trying to value this gift of the priesthood that I've received, and to try to live that out. I mean, I think, the work itself is difficult. There's a lot, unfortunately. It's a lot. Piles of stuff that come in. A lot of it.
You wrote the diagram. Do you remember the diagram of your office? So when I went to Rome, it was like 2 months after Father Tait arrived, and we were having coffee. There's a little coffee shop right up the way. And he's like, well, here's my office. And so he's drawing this diagram. He's like, this is my desk, and this is my bookshelf, and this is a pile of cases, and here's another pile of cases, and this is another pile of cases, and this pile is threatening to fall over on top of me. And I was like,
oh no,
wow, okay, that sounds super fun. So glad you're here. Maybe you could just leave. Maybe we should just like bring you back.
Do a rescue mission. No, thankfully, none of the piles have fallen over on me.
Because there's no OSHA in Italy. So, like, what would happen if you were injured on the job?
I know. And I didn't sign up for that workman's comp insurance that the Vatican offers. So I would be out of luck. But
we would rescue you. Don't worry. We'll send a SEAL team in to extract you. It'll be great.
Like I said, though it's a lot, I do sense that it's very important work. So, I mean, in that sense, I have the kind of inner strength to continue on with kind of looking at a lot of things that are super unpleasant. because I know it's the church does need to respond to this. The church does need to, if someone is falsely accused, to say, we don't believe that this happened. Or if someone is accurately accused and they're guilty, they need to be justly punished. And, that's important for the church to do. So
yeah, what does that look like? And also, I don't know if anybody watching, if you don't know Father Tait or haven't played a board game with him or hung out with him, he is a very sweet man. He can definitely play his games, and we always joke, like board games, we always joke too when we make a mistake or if we accidentally cheat in a way that might have helped us. We'll be like, Father Tait would not be okay with that. But you're in a good role.
Ago, it was like, oh, Father Tait is probably like waking from a nightmare right now. He's wondering what is wrong with the world. And it's because we had accidentally cheated in the game. And it was like, oh, Father Tait's going to be so displeased.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're in the Office of Discipline, I believe.
Yes.
And I just love that, because I feel like I have anger issues, and I try to, work through those, and I have kids, and that's where they come out. I get very angry. And so when I think of discipline, I think of anger, but I do, incorrectly. But I really appreciate that, someone like you, again, someone who I think is a very kind person, is in the Office of Discipline. So what does that look like in what you do?
Right. So, there are kind of a lot of different ways that cases are dealt with. There could be a whole judicial trial in the church. There could be a kind of a more streamlined process called an administrative process. If something is too old, the church kind of has also like a statute of limitations. So a lot of, the civil law or jurisdiction has a statute of limitations. So, they wouldn't maybe treat a case if it happened, a certain amount of years ago, because it's just difficult to prove. So the church also understands that, and sometimes we can, derogate or give a sense that we can go back and look at those old cases, but often we don't, because it would be hard to prove one way or the other. So, there are a lot of different ways you can treat it, but what could be the possible penalties? Well, one, you could, like they say, the worst one is to be dismissed from the priesthood, the clerical state. But also there can be,
real quick, what does that mean? They don't unbecome a priest, but what?
Right.
What
so
exactly happens?
it's a unique thing, because sacramentally we believe that once you're ordained a priest, you're a priest forever. Right. So there's a indelible mark on your soul which says you are a priest. However, that sacramental character that you have, the sacramental identity, often needs a kind of approval to direct it or focus it in a certain way. Like a priest needs to have faculties to hear confession, or there are a lot of different things to celebrate a wedding. To officiate at a wedding, the priest needs special permissions or whatever. So you're going to lose all of those. You could never officiate at a wedding. You can never preach. You don't celebrate the mass again. Which, obviously that for the priest is the biggest thing. Now, it's interesting that the priest who is dismissed from the clerical state could hear a confession if someone is dying, because the church says that's so important. We want this person to be right with God when they meet him at his death or her death, that even that priest who was dismissed could hear a confession in that moment, even though normally they never could hear a confession. But yeah, so that's what that means. And then you cannot dress as a priest. You don't have, you would still be bound to celibacy, but often that's dispensed at the same time. right? So,
Oh, wow.
because priests, when we're ordained, we, even as ordained a deacon, we promise to be celibate.
Mm-hmm.
Now that would remain unless there's a special dispensation given. Those are often given together. When you dismiss someone, they could be also dispensed from celibacy.
Wow.
But like if there's a judicial case that goes on, the priest could be dismissed but not dispensed from celibacy. And he would have to ask for that if he wants. So that's what that means when you're dismissed from the clerical state. So all of the things you think of a priest, like I've got my collar on,
Right.
no, I can't do mass, can't do wedding, can't do baptism. None of those normal things that I can't anoint, except again if there's maybe that danger of death. So it's really limits completely what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Then other ways, though, if a priest isn't dismissed, they can have their ministry limited severely, right? So they may not be able to minister publicly. So they could maybe have a private mass, but they may not be allowed to dress as a cleric, or they could be asked to live in a specific place to kind of give supervision. I mean, it's not like you've got a monitor on your leg or anything like the civil government can do, but it can be a way of saying, the church, well, we're going to provide for you, but we also want to keep an eye on you to make sure that you don't go back to this behavior from before. With this new book of canon law that's coming out, there are actually some new penalties that were added, especially financial ones. So you can make them pay a certain sum, or you can remove pay. So that's a big thing, and obviously could have a real impact on someone.
Lose your TikTok followers.
Right. Yeah. But
Take them away.
That would be an example of a prohibition. Like, okay, you could say you can have no social media, right? As a cleric, because the priest has to obey the bishop in a sense, and if that's assigned as a penalty or given as a precept, that's a precept is another thing in canon law, which kind of it's like a little law for an individual, right? You can't do this, you have to do this. So those things could be imposed in there. You can also give penances, which are not technically penalties, but it could be like you have to pray a rosary for victims of sexual abuse every Friday for 10 years. It could be something like that.
It's sort of like probation and community service.
Yeah, a little bit, right? So sometimes you've heard maybe of a life of prayer and penance. So that was something, especially when there's the case is very old and you can't really deal with it. What can the priest do? Well, you can ask him to pray. You can ask him to do penance for either what he did or even for, what others have done that have caused, a lot of harm, a lot of people to leave the church, a lot of people to, not believe or not kind of be connected anymore to the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that people misunderstand about canon law. So Ryan, you were talking about Father Tait is this very sweet, kind person. I mean, you can teach a game very well because you don't jump down someone's throat for doing it incorrectly. You might have a preferred way you would do it, and you will let that be known. But you're not going to just automatically slap the hand of someone for doing something incorrectly or actually incorrectly. And I think that's a misconception that people have about the law, whether it's civil law or canon law, which is a little bit easier to speak on because there is this restorative sense that there is a right conduct. There's a way that we ought to behave. And by God's grace, we can do that. We all will err in certain ways, but we can reform ourselves. We can become better. And the law is helping to guide that process, not in a slap on the wrist kind of way. When it needs to be, it can, but it's more meant to bring you closer to God. It's more to right the wrongs of original sin and the ways that we cooperate with sin.
Mhm.
And I wonder, what are some other kinds of misconceptions that people have about canon law, about like the work that you do, the work that in general you do, not just you particularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The church has a very long tradition of having her own law, and why? I mean, you could number one, you could ask, well, what does it matter that the church has its own law? Well, because it's a community, and to govern or to guide or to lead a community, you need to have rules, right? You can think of, you know, any kind of sporting club or whatever it might be. There are rules
I love
because
what you said there, sporting club.
Or games.
You're
Games
clearly
have
an
rules.
athlete.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I'm an athlete. Anyway, but you would have these rules because it's a group, it's a society. So that's the church has this long tradition. But I think one thing, and this is a challenge, and I think you see this, in the world of politics and legislation, in kind of the civil world, laws are being used in different ways to get a certain end or goal, as opposed to what ideally the church is doing with her law. It's not to arrive at a goal, it's to arrive at truth and justice. And obviously that is, I think, because people have the sense of law it's coercive and it's a tool to get to my goal. Right? I'm going to make this law so that we force everyone to do this. The church's
and certainly
law,
it can be that, as we see, in our country these days.
absolutely, and obviously even in the church that sometimes is there. But the real goal behind it is to look at the truth and justice based on our belief, all of our beliefs as a Catholic Christian, right? So to have that focus. So that, I think, is one kind of misconception, or maybe what we're doing. I think the other time, another maybe issue is there are limits to what the law can do, right? I had a professor in my canon law studies. He said, canon law is not the only thing in the church, and maybe it's not the most important thing in the church, but it's a necessary thing in the church. And it's kind of like your skeleton. Maybe you don't see it, maybe you don't appreciate it. You need to have it, but it's not the whole thing, because you need a brain, obviously, and organs and skin and all of these things. So it's a whole complex. But if we either put too much or too little emphasis on what canon law is, then that's where we get problems. And I think we can see kind of in the history of the church where there's a pendulum swing one way or the other. Like, law becomes too much, and then you can get some of those excesses that we were talking about earlier about with the Inquisition, versus not doing anything. And that's why we have so much reaction and negativity towards kind of the church currently, because there were decades where nothing was done in terms of the church's kind of reaction or response to some of these problems that are there. So I think those are a couple of things that, in terms of understanding what canon law is, it's important to keep in mind.
I like that analogy too, or just that kind of thematic idea of the pendulum, in that I feel like we see that in all areas of our lives. And it's helpful to understand that, because John and I have had several experiences in just non-Catholic areas and non-Catholic groups. And it's always about, tolerance. But, oh my gosh, you're Catholic. Don't say anything. Except I feel like that, oh my gosh, you're Catholic, don't say anything, is more of a self-imposition, kind of a response to just kind of cultural sentiment, than anybody that we've ever dealt with. And we were on a trip doing tribal, indigenous kind of cultural awareness work. And this collector had a whole room full of all these sacred objects from every faith, including the Catholic faith. He had a bunch of relics. He had a bunch of, what was I going to say?
Crucifixes or
monstrance. Yeah. And John and I are like, is that Jesus in there, or is that just old crusty bread? And I didn't ask, but John actually asked him about it, because are we there to rescue Jesus from this collector who just doesn't know? And he apparently, you could tell the story a little bit more.
I was just thinking the word, because I don't actually know, and the word that probably is better is curator. He calls himself a curator. So he hasn't sought this
or
stuff
caretaker,
necessarily. Like, people have actually gifted these things to him. Like world leaders have come to this place, and so he is very respectful about it. But it was definitely like a thing that you're like, all right, this is a strange scenario. And I waited till we were, done working with our client, and we were on our way out the door, because I was also, you're always trying to balance these things. It's like, it's not really my place to like blow up this entire like interview that's set up here. And I just asked, I was like, I'm just wondering if if those are consecrated, whatever. And he's like, oh. And he actually was surprised, I think, that somebody like had some care about some sort of religion, because I think he probably encounters so many secular people. He gave me a very confusing answer about having some priest friends and a priest in the family, and that, oh, don't worry, nobody ever touches them. And priests will actually ask me sometimes if they can borrow them and use them for like adoration and stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm still confused, but what?
Still not sure how appropriate this is.
But it was interesting.
We'll write a letter.
Like Ryan was saying about like tolerance and like respect and whatever, we learned a lot about like the sacredness of eagle feathers and eagles and eagle parts and stuff, and the how that it's illegal to sell, eagle feathers and whatever, and that they have special permission through federal things to actually participate with the Fish and Wildlife Service to protect eagles, and then to like hold on to and distribute the feathers from like eagles that have died or that they've collected, during molting or whatever. But that there's no trade in it. There's no legal trade in it, and then that you need to be respectful, and this is a sacred thing for their population. And I was thinking to myself, like, that's great, that's really cool, and I'll be respectful. But like, it's the same thing, isn't it? Like, aren't we getting it back the other direction? Like, if it would be a big deal for me to have a bunch of eagle feathers and just have them up in my house and be like, look at these, aren't these cool? I just got them somewhere. Then, do you see what you're doing with like having all these other religious artifacts? Like,
yeah, I think it's interesting curiosity. Like, some people are just curious and they like collecting things, or they think something looks cool. There's an ignorance, and not in a pejorative way. There's just a lack of understanding about the thing and the meaning of the thing. And I think most people are respectful if you say, hey, actually, this thing, it means this. They are appreciative of knowing more about that area, that topic, that faith, whatever it is. And then I think, like the curator that you were talking about, I mean, you probably didn't have a lot of time to broach the topic either, so it probably wasn't the ideal situation. But I would like to think that a guy like that is probably trying to be very respectful, and that if he knew what these things meant, then there would be a difference in how he presents them or takes care of them, or if he should even have them or not.
I hope I seeded the idea at least. And if he was being honest with me, and he does have, priest friends or family, and those priests aren't ones that are cases showing up on Father Tait's desk, then I would hope that just seeding the idea of like, because I was just like, yeah, I just wanted to ask, because like if they are consecrated, like they, you know, I'm sure that there's a church around here, or if not, like I know priests that would take them. So just wanted to ask, and he's like, well, yeah, thanks for your concern. Yeah, I'm glad that, you know, you guys care or whatever. And then he kind of left it there.
Right. And,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of our work at the congregation and, you know, our doctrine, our belief, it is important. It is sacred. That's why we have an organization like the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, because what we believe is important, right? And it has an effect. And so I think that, you know, whether it's, you know, those physical objects, but also our beliefs, what we teach, what we share, what we write, right? All of those things also can have either a very positive effect or a negative effect. And so that's why I think the work of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith is vital, and it's important. I mean, I for those who don't know, we have a great website actually on the Vatican website. If you go, you can, like, it down at the bottom, they have kind of a place where you can click on the different Roman Curia offices. And then if you go to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, we have all of our documents there, which are the doctrinal things, but also some of those disciplinary things that we deal with. It's very useful, very helpful. You know, like most recently, and this was one of the little catch lines that you had, was COVID. We have the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith came out with a statement about vaccinations and the morality of them, and you know, respect for conscience, but also weighing, you know, kind of a global health pandemic. So I mean, it was a very, I think, balanced and good document. So anyway, that has all kinds of things, and you can go and look and see some of the work of the and I see the link there. That's great. You are very tech savvy.
I'm on it. I'll put it in chat too. I mean, this website is great. Everyone's going to want to go to it.
Why not?
I've never been to
this. But in any case, just to talk a little bit about COVID, it was a weird experience. Now, Carolyn has been to Rome probably more than I have, at least in terms of trips. Maybe not in total time spent here, but trips, you're probably close.
9.
But in any case, it was really odd to be here, you know, because obviously Italy was hit very hard with COVID, and the restrictions were very severe, especially last March of 2020. And it was a ghost town, and it's picked up somewhat in terms of tourists and pilgrims, but still very, it's down. And but to see St. Peter's, to see, you know, the Spanish Steps empty, something I've never seen in my life. So it was a really kind of eerie experience. And, you know, you had to have so I still went into work. Many people didn't go into work at all during this complete lockdown. But you had to always have papers with you. The Carabinieri, which is kind of like a state police force, they could stop you at any moment. They needed to see that paper. They would actually call your work to, you know, double check that you weren't lying.
Well, people had zones. You could only be
like
so far away from your home in normal.
Yeah, it was almost worse than the Inquisition. Yeah. they had fines, and they were stiff. But yeah, like if you passed from one comune, which is kind of like your city, if you passed from your city bounds to another, you needed to show these papers. They had roadblocks or police stopping. So it was really very, very surreal in a sense, because Rome, all roads lead to Rome, and that's a very true statement. And it had so many people, so many pilgrims, but then to see it emptied was just a surreal thing. We have currently, still a lot of restrictions. They have what they call the green pass, the basically proof of vaccination or having had COVID and recovered, or having had a test within the last 48 hours. So, and you need that, like, even to go out to eat if you're going to eat inside. So it's a different environment than, at least in Wisconsin when I was home this last August. Very different kind of environment, much more controlled. So, yeah, you say the Inquisition. It's a different sort of Inquisition here for your COVID status.
Yeah, I did want, we're at about 1:20. I want to respect your time and our viewers as well, but I did want to get, a little bit personal with that. Like, what was that like? I know, being a priest, living alone is something that a lot of priests face because they don't have community where they live with other people. Some priests might even be in rural parishes where they don't see their brother priests very frequently. Now, when you go into the office, I'm sure you see a lot, and there's a lot of, a lot of more going on. But what was that like for you? Like what was the most difficult for you?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning, so it was interesting. So this is called the Villa Stritch where I live. You see at least part of my apartment here. The Villa Stritch is a house that is owned by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops and for American priests who are working for the Vatican. So they were doing some very major renovations. We have 2 buildings with different apartments in them, and I was in the one that was being worked on, and we moved back in the day before Italy completely shut down. So I was happy to be at least back home, but it was very difficult because our people, who came in, for our, what do I want to say, those who help in the kitchen or whatever, it was very difficult for them. I think there was a lot of unknown at the beginning, and certainly, you saw, and I'm sure you saw back home too, a lot of these pictures out of, northern Italy, that area where it really hit hard, and they had like these army vehicles carrying away the deceased who weren't able to be buried. So there was just a lot of uncertainty about it. And all of the other seminarians who had gone, who studied here in Rome, they had all been called home. So I was kind of the only Madisonian left here in Rome. So it felt a little lonely that way, and kind of just, well, we don't know what to do. But anyway, going into work was always a little bit challenging. You kind of wondered, well, is it a matter of, they care about you, or they need the work done, kind of a question. But
were you going into work when the lockdown happened?
I went into work about every other day, and
so they still let you go into work.
So but again, you had to have your papers to show, and at that time I was the only kind of native English speaking official there. We have a couple of priests of Indian descent, one of German descent, who can do some cases that are in English, but I was the main one at that time. We have since added a new English speaking official in the disciplinary section, so it helps. But in any case, when I was going in, it was mostly because of those language questions and issues. We needed to have an English speaker in there, so that's why I was considered an essential worker. because of English.
And what like what was kind of difficult? Like, did community change? Do you regularly hang out with your brother priests or families or friends? Obviously you're in a completely different country, so if you're interacting with your family back here or friends back here, it's all online anyway. But
right,
what was
was
that difficult?
The one blessing I would say is to have other priests here at the Villa Stritch. We had kind of that we had some of that group, and we were all kind of going through the same thing at the same time. So in that regard, that helped a lot. And also being a priest, I know many Catholics felt, I can't get to mass. I can't get to confession. We lived in a house of priests, so we have a chapel. We can celebrate mass. We had priests. We could go to confession. So in that regard, spiritually, it was important. I also we have a convent of Carmelite sisters that is very close by, and I'm one of the chaplains for them. So I was able to at least go there. They kind of wanted to make sure we had a very limited group of people who went. And again, the Italian government did allow certain religious exemptions for that. So, to go even over there, but just, walking 5 minutes down the road, I made sure I had my papers with me. So in that regard, it was at least good we had a bit of community here. And so that was helpful.
Yeah.
In that whole time, did you ever really go beyond the Holy Office? Like, was that kind of the furthest you went during the real significant quarantine lockdown?
Yeah, because you could only go to work, the doctor, or the grocery store or pharmacist, or go home. That was it.
You went to St. Peter's, I know, a little bit.
Yeah, so because
it's connected.
The CDF is right next door. You could go into St. Peter's, which was empty. And so it's beautiful to see, but it's very awkward, or not awkward, kind of eerie.
It's lifeless. Like, usually there's a lot of life in the space, and then it's just
to see the
Matthew
biggest
Pearson
church in the world without any people in it was quite something. And in fact, you may have seen that prayer service with Pope Francis out with this empty square. That spoke about volumes to what that time was like here in Italy.
Yeah. So we are kind of coming up on 1:30, but I do want to hear your two truths and a lie, especially because at the beginning, Carolyn aptly, said, "Ooh, but Father Tait never lies. So how's this going to go?"
He finds this will be amazing. You can see how it affects him when he has to lie in the context of the game.
Yeah.
And he can't do it.
Like what is it? That one night werewolf or whatever.
One night werewolf.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that. There's another one. I forget the name of it. It's like a sci-fi one. You got to lie all the time. Terrible. Okay, here are 3 stories. Tell me which one is not true.
All right. And if you're playing along at home, Carolyn, do you have the coasters?
Here.
We just got our new coasters in. So, Father, we'll send you some of those as well. But if you're playing along at home and you post in chat, send us your
Laura
details.
Zimmerman is here for this.
Yes, I see that.
And we'll send you stuff.
But those coasters would come in handy. They look awesome. So you can send them over with with either Father Powers or Father Wanta, who are coming back over. But if not, I'll pick them up at Christmas time.
We'll have the other producer, wait, where are you? Sorry. This producer help with that.
Yeah, she's very good at that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I once ruined Advent by wearing a Packer tie.
Ooh.
You ruined Advent in terms of like a liturgical aspect, or like your family?
I don't want to give too many details. I just want to say that I ruined.
Yeah, it'll be hard because we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to share this real quick. I forgot to do this. I always have to do this because it's so much fun.
The truth is a lie.
Gotta have the bumper.
I know, so that people know what's going on.
Make that, by the way?
That was Maggie. Like, I don't know, months ago, I had her come down here, and I was like, record this several times.
Nice.
She was awesome.
Okay, I have met Pope Benedict 3 times.
And
the last one is my worst flight experience. Took me 3 days to get from Rome to Madison.
See, I feel like that one's definitely true because I know he's had some really severe delays and he's not happy about it, as no one would be, but particularly displeasing to him.
Yeah.
Because he needs to get a credit card that has lounge access, but he has refused to date to do so.
I am not as adept as you are, Miss Averill, about working the credit cards.
I try to teach you so many things, and
I'm sure she'd train you. Yeah.
I know.
So the second one's difficult too because you sent 2 pictures of you and Pope Francis, I believe, but you said you've met Pope Benedict 3 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's tricky because our advertisement today was 2 pictures of you with Pope Francis, 2 different pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So he was still there. When Pope Benedict was elected, he was still there. So the first time could have been like hi, Maggie.
Yeah, this is 2 truths and a lie right here.
Hi.
So he was still there when Pope Benedict was elected. So I feel like that could have been a thing because if you were in Rome in that kind of capacity as a student, it's a little bit easier to kind of meet the Pope. And then you went back while he was still the Holy Roman Pontiff. So I feel like that one could also be true. However, just like you guys talk about, it could be a distinction of the quantity of visits with Pope Benedict.
Yeah. So that's a good one. And then the first one is you ruined, you say Advent or Lent?
Advent.
You ruined Advent with a tie.
Packer tie.
Packer tie. That seems like too much of a real story to be a lie, because it's a very creative lie if it is a lie, unless it's somebody, I don't know. Your family's from Wisconsin, I believe, so Packers should be in the blood.
Yeah, grew up Sauk City, so
yeah. So it's not like your family's Vikings fans and you wore a Packer tie.
No.
I find it hard to see him in a tie, a Packers tie.
Ooh.
Like it's a little bit, it's not very elegant, it's a little bit like, yeah.
Also, how do you ruin Advent with a tie? You're like, you know what? Screw it. We're not having Christmas.
See, I wonder if it was like a seminary story. Like he was in seminary and there was some kind of thing and he showed up in a Packers tie and then like some superior was annoyed
enough to say you ruined Advent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Laura, you should throw your guess in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
She made one comment.
Yeah, I don't know what that means exactly. Could be at least
the number of times he met Pope Benedict.
Oh,
maybe.
Sure. Yeah, Not a lie, but also not fully true. That's a good call. Yeah.
Like I want to believe that the first one is true because I want to know how he ruined Advent. Yeah. So Laura said I'm going to say Pope Benedict met him at least 3 times. I could see that being true. Like he has met him, 4 times.
Yeah, it's probably like a fanboy experience.
I was this close. I was that close to meeting Pope Benedict, and the canon of the church of St. Mary Major Basilica. He's like, "Well, just follow in after us. Just come on in, and you can meet Pope Benedict." And I was so excited. And then he didn't think about, you're not like one of us. They're not going to let you through. Like you are not. Like,
you're not a cleric.
Mm-hmm. And so then he was very apologetic that he didn't think about that in advance. And I was like, it's okay. It's not okay.
You probably had a skirt on though, which they would have let you through with, right? Because you have to wear a skirt to go in.
No shorts.
That
No
yeah,
shorts,
I
no
mean
slacks.
that's in like a very formal capacity. If you're like the Queen of England, meeting the Pope. I was a 22-year-old tourist who was sitting on the front steps of Mary Major.
They probably wouldn't have let you in if you just threw a collar on either.
I am a Lady Pope, though. Pi
And
High X
then-
Die.
Well,
You know, being
gonna
a
have to
lady
report
pope,
this.
that's one of our reserved delicts, Carolyn.
Which is why I love bringing it up to you, because it is your bread and butter.
Reserve Delix, is that like something that we get to waterboard people for?
No. Remember, we were not doing that at the Inquisition these days. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Also, I was listening. There's
The
a great
Guantanamo
podcast.
Bay of the Vatican. Like, what is this?
There's a great, just to characterize it a little bit more for some historical accuracy. Inquisition was also just kind of a term for the legal body that would punish people who do wrong things, and so like each government had their own, local and national inquisitions. And this is on a podcast with Trent Horn and I forget the guy from Catholic Answers. They're talking about the historicity of it. And apparently people would speak heresy so that they would go to the Catholic Inquisition as opposed to the actual, I think it was like Spanish government, their Inquisition, because it was more humane. So that's something to think about and look up. And, I'm sure there was excess, like Father said, and the pendulum swings. However, you look at that and there's just more information to the story than Monty Python.
Is it like
what are you going to say, Carolyn?
Thing? So like if I, as a Lady Pope, if I continue to claim my status as a Pius XI high school graduate Lady Pope, do I get like all expenses paid trip to Rome so that I can be like tried?
And you get to hang out with Father Tait. That'd be amazing.
They're doing the heresies to get the free trip so that they can like go visit their family in Rome.
I mean, don't go that far. Like it's a presumption. You don't want to like sin knowing you can go to confession and get it forgiven. But like a step below that.
Yeah.
Penal laws need to be interpreted strictly. So since you've not been or attempted ordination, Carolyn, even though you may call yourself a Lady Pope,
to get a rise out of you.
That's just it's the distinction. That's just a self-delusion. It's not a.
No, it's not a self-delusion. It's an actual thing. The Pius XI popes were the team, and then you had
women's teams are the Lady Popes.
Sports, and instead of changing the name, they just went with Lady in front of the name.
Yeah.
It just so happened that Pius was the popes, and it became a little awkward since the 60s.
Yeah.
A lot of things have become awkward since the 60s. But by the way, you haven't answered which one is the lie.
I was looking down below, and we have a lot of chat coming up, so I'm just throwing these up real quick.
So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with number one. I'm gonna go with
that I ruined
the tie.
If
Laura, if the screen starts talking back to you, see a doctor.
If you're not good at lying. Maybe this is maybe somebody else said this to you,
or somebody else ruined it and you were there, or you think they ruined it,
or it wasn't a tie.
It could have been Father Eric.
That's my guess. Number
They've
one.
They've been friends for a long time. I could see wearing a Packer tie.
Let's see. Number one is you said you wore it and ruined it. Number two is you've met Pope Benedict 3 times.
3 times.
And number 3 was. You regularly waterboard? I forget what number 3 was.
No.
Yeah.
What did I say for number 3? Oh, it took me 3 days to get home. That was.
That's right. I think we all are like, yeah, that sounds legit. Yeah. That sounds like a terrible thing. So I'm gonna guess number 1 as well. So Carolyn, would you guess?
I'm gonna say number 1.
Number 1. I think we're all 3 number 1.
I'm not responsible if that's not correct. You all should.
It's very good reasoning. It's very good reasoning.
Number 1 is true.
Oh. So how does
Carolyn,
one ruin
you guessed it exactly
Advent?
right. I was in seminary. I was in college seminary, and the rector reacted very aversely and said that I had ruined Advent. because it was not only me, but there were 2 other seminarians who wore it, and we all sat
that's
next
amazing.
to one another. And one of the seminarians had a, let's say, a very he thought it was extremely hilarious, which it really wasn't. But anyway, he started laughing and then created a scene before Vespers of First Advent, and then we were told that I ruined we ruined Advent.
The entire
And
I
used to
love
have-
that.
we used to
I
have
love that
spaghetti.
so much.
And then we would sometimes be able to have a little wine in loco parentis that never appeared again because we had ruined Advent.
I think maybe
That's
he was
amazing.
having either A, a bad day, or B, a power trip, C, both. Not having been there.
Mostly B, but maybe also C. But anyway, no. So that was true. That I was I believe a freshman in college seminary that year. So
I respect that. I would have been in total favor because I love chaos. You know this, and I like being a little bit subversive, but like just underneath what's like actually subversive.
So we were required to wear a tie for Vespers, and so we did. And we can't help that this seminarian had this weird thing. Number 3 is also true, which it took me 3 days and was the worst trip I've ever had. It was US Air, which is no longer in business. I needed to fly from Rome to Philly to Pittsburgh to Madison. The first day, the flight was canceled. We got there and they waited like 3 hours and they told us, the plane is broken, flight is canceled. So we had to come back the next day. So that was the first day. But we had to stay at the airport hotel and get up at like 3:30 in the morning and go to the airport. And then we waited 5 hours, which then we got on the plane, but they gave me they double booked my ticket. So they moved me on the plane. We get to Philadelphia 2 hours late. There's a big snowstorm. I get the last flight to Pittsburgh for the evening, but then I've missed the flight to Madison. So I call my priest friend's mother who lives in Pittsburgh. We were traveling together. I said, I'm stuck at the airport. Can you pick me up? She said, okay, sure. Well, because he lived in Pittsburgh, they bumped him off the flight completely, said, I don't care. I'm getting home tonight. I've already lost a day. I'm going to rent a car. So he rented a car and drove from Philly to Pittsburgh, which is 6 hours in the snow.
Oof.
So he gets back though about 1:30. Well, I got in at 12:30. And so he comes in the door and his mom says, shh, be quiet. Father Tait's sleeping.
Oh my gosh.
What is he doing here?
Awesome.
He got stranded. So anyway, they take me back the next day. And then they were ready to bump me because they had put me on standby. And I said, no, you're not going to bump me. I got forceful at that moment. You very kindly said I'm very sweet and kind. I was not kind and sweet at that moment. And I said, no, you're going to put me on that flight. So anyway, I got back to Madison on the 3rd day, kind of like the resurrection on the 3rd day. What is not true, I did not meet Pope Benedict 3 times, but Laura Zimmerman called it, I met him only twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. That's a good way to do it.
I was not here when he was elected, but there were both times when I was studying canon law. So once with a big group with the North American College for our 50th anniversary no, it was the 150th anniversary of the North American College, 2009. We met with the Pope. But I realized in 2019 that I have been in Rome for the 140th, 150th, and 160th anniversaries of the North American.
That's a sign you got to get out.
one could make that conclusion, and they would not be wrong. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, sorry I kept you long, but hey, do I win the coasters because I stumped you all?
I think. What did Laura finally guess? Did she guess number 2? Because she reasoned it.
You get this.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, she kind of wavered a little bit, it seems.
Okay.
I don't know what the final verdict was.
Her most solid one, though, was I'm going to say Pope Benedict Delio.
Right, and
That-
she got the
Right.
correct reasoning. Could be at least, though. See,
Yeah.
not a lie, but also not fully true. And that was
Yeah.
the only way I could, do the facial thing so you wouldn't tell I was.
That sounds like just what a human would say. I could do the facial thing so that you do not tell that I'm lying.
Is this a conspiracy theory now
I
that
love
Father
it.
Tate's really a robot? I like
Oh
it.
yeah, the CDF is aliens. I hope someone
Out of an
catches
hour and
wind of
45
this.
minutes conversation, that's the conclusion.
Yeah, I hope
Yes.
somebody in your office catches wind of this and they're like, "What is going on? What are you doing in your free time?"
On that website, is there like a Yelp sort of system where I can do a review of different officials?
Yeah, and like report this.
No.
That's awesome. So we
No,
will.
we would joke about that, how we were gonna like create a dossier of like scandalous things to send to his superiors so that he would get sent home early. Like nothing
Yeah, that would work.
actually scandalous, for the record.
Yeah,
But-
they're just things like he doesn't like ketchup, or like
Yeah.
just
Hates marinara.
He likes eating a cream-based gelato with a fruit-based gelato, which is a cardinal sin for
Yeah.
Italians. So like,
But that would not be true, though. That
But
would be
they're
a lie.
delicious. Do
I
whatever
could
you
have
want.
said that on our two truths and a lie, too.
Do whatever
Yeah.
you want. That's
This
my
is also
feeling
us
about
reporting
gelato.
things, so it's not you lying, it's us lying. So we can deal with those consequences.
But then there will
in
be
the afterlife.
disturbance in the forest, and I'll be upset because the rules are not being followed.
You will sense it. That's right.
True.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we will send you lots of coasters and you can pass them out. We're going to send them to Laura as well. Or maybe I could just bring them to
Send
church.
them to
'cause
me, and I will
I'll see
take
them.
care of both of those.
That's amazing. We won't even send them. You're at the
I'm in the
office. You
office.
have them.
I'm
Yeah.
right here.
So just grab a bunch. You can take
I
care
will.
of that. So thanks to everyone for jumping in and hanging out with us today. Special thanks to Father Tait in Rome for taking time to hang out with us. This was awesome. The best part is, it's an hour 45 and I feel like I have so many more questions. And so we're going to have to get you on at least 2 or 3 more times to really get
Awesome.
into the meat of things.
But will he
So
make
thank
it
you
to
so
the
much for
Five
coming
Timers
on.
Club? Like,
Well,
Yeah.
that remains to be seen.
And you get a smoking jacket at some point if you get the
Someday.
5 timers. So yeah.
or maybe like a
Um,
ticket to Rome. Maybe that should be the prize.
Or just a
Maybe
ticket to ride.
A ticket to Madison should be the prize for me. At least.
A ticket anywhere in the world. That's the 5 time. So everyone's going to be in the 4 timers club because we're not going to want to pay money to.
I'm in the
put
five. This is the
everyone
5th time.
on. Okay, the 6 timers club. And thank you, Carolyn, for joining us, and as always, producing and helping and just being a positive voice in the stream. We had somebody in YouTube shouting about vaccinations. Unfortunately, got rid of them. That's not what this is about. We're not about shouting at each other.
Unless it's in
what
a
else?
game and it's for funsies.
Oh yeah, the vaccination game.
No,
let's
not
go ahead and
that
play
good.
that. Now you
the
put
most
it in my
dangerous game.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anything that you want to promote, Father? We shared that website. I can
Sanctity?
throw that website up again if people are interested.
Yeah, that I mean, I think that's it's a very nice thing. There's actually a little bit of history on there, and yeah, so I would just recommend check that out. And the Vatican website actually has a lot of good and important and useful things on it. So if nothing else in your board, you can click on the different popes pictures and it gives a little history. And so
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Check that out. It's also in the chat up above on Facebook and YouTube. This is also a podcast too. So as I said at the beginning, I'm the Monsignore or
Monsignore.
Monsignore of the podcast. So check that out. It's 1 or 2 episodes every week. We're putting the episodes from the beginning of COVID up because we just have a backlog we're working through. So we're like 50 episodes behind. It's awesome. You can kind of catch up and be like, oh man, at least it's not 2020 anymore. So we have a lot of great discussions there. This will get turned into one as well. It'll probably be in 2022. But check that out. letsbackflip.com/Let's Backflip Show. Or we're on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher. We're now on Amazon. We're on all the things. We're there. There's no excuse. Check it out. You'll hear Carolyn on some of those. You'll hear John in most of those. and Father
Except
Tait
when Carolyn's on.
sometime. Except, yeah, not together. Just this time. This is a very special time. Check that out. Hit subscribe. Do all the things. John or Carolyn, do you guys got anything else for me today?
Just
anything
one
else
thing.
you want to share? Just one thing. What could be happening?
You come in where I am.
I don't know.
Okay, look.
You gave up the ghost.
The Spanish Inquisition. The John Inquisition.
There it is. Nice. They are in the same space. I'm not. Oh, you know what? Just one more thing.
Is he gonna bring a child in? What's going on here?
It's gonna be like 20 minutes before Ryan gets here for the.
Exactly.
I know. You guys have to wait 10 minutes for the joke to pay off.
We're just gonna.
I got a phone call. I'm gonna have to hang up. So.
We're gonna post the Monty Python clip on YouTube and just watch it while Ryan drives.
I love it. Awesome. Thanks again. Thanks everyone for coming and hanging out. That's what we got. We'll see you next week.
Cha-cha-cha.
Bye.